Pardon me, sir. I did not mean to do it.
With those quiet words, spoken as she accidentally stepped on the foot of her executioner, Marie Antoinette bid farewell to life. Moments later, the infamous Queen of France met the guillotine. But what happened to her body after the blade fell? That's the mystery we uncover in today's video. Early on the morning of October 16th, 1793, a servant entered Marie Antoinette's cold prison cell in La Conciergerie to help the Queen prepare for her execution. Her once glorious blonde hair had been hacked off the day before by a prison guard, a crude symbol of her fall from grace. She dressed in a plain white gown, fragile and ghost-like, and covered her bare head with a simple cap. No jewellery, no royal finery, just silence. Outside, the streets of Paris pulsed with anticipation. Crowds gathered, elbow to elbow, eager to witness the downfall of the Austrian woman, the foreign queen they had come to loathe. The same people who had once cheered her arrival with flowers and fireworks, now waited to see her head fall. Her hands were tied tightly behind her back as she climbed into an open cart around 10 a.m. Unlike her husband, who had been taken to the scaffold in a closed carriage, Marie Antoinette was fully exposed, forced to ride through the streets of Paris under the gaze of thousands. With the crowd's cries ringing in her ears, Marie Antoinette composed herself, stepped down from the cart, and calmly climbed the steps to the scaffold. As final preparations were made, she prayed in silence. Then she was strapped to the plank, her head secured beneath the wooden brace. At 12:15, the life of the 37-year-old Archduchess, Dauphine and Queen came to an end, on the very square where, 23 years earlier, she had celebrated her wedding. The executioner held her head high, turning to each corner of the scaffold. The crowd roared, "Vive la République!" Her head and body were taken to the Madeleine Cemetery, the same place where her husband had been buried nearly 10 months earlier. The gravediggers were on their lunch break, so her remains were left lying unattended on the grass. She was finally placed in a deep pit and covered with quicklime. Although the revolutionary government wanted the royal burial sites to remain unknown and the bodies to decompose quickly, one loyalist quietly purchased the land. He discreetly marked the resting place of the royal family with a simple fence, 2 willows, and a cypress tree. No one knows exactly when Madame Tussaud managed to make a death mask of the Queen, whom she once served as a royal sculptor. But in her memoirs, she claimed that during the Revolution, hundreds of severed heads of her former acquaintances passed through her hands. That was her deal with the revolutionaries. She would mould their faces in wax in exchange for her life. Some argue that the famous mask of Marie Antoinette was created much later, simply as a clever marketing piece for her museums. But one way or another, we can still see how the Queen looked through the eyes of someone who once knew her. After Napoleon's fall in 1815, King Louis XVIII set out to find the remains of his brother, Louis XVI, and Marie Antoinette. The former owner of the cemetery stepped forward, Guillotine, and revealed where the royal couple had been buried. The exhumation began, and the first body they found was Marie Antoinette's. What remained was a pile of bones. Her skull, remarkably intact, was identified by one of the men present, thanks to the unique shape of her mouth. The skull was lying near her feet, exactly where the gravediggers had left it in an act of final humiliation. Strands of her once beautiful, fair hair were still visible, as were fragments of the simple white dress she wore on the day of her execution. The next day, the remains of King Louis XVI were also uncovered. Both sets of royal remains were placed in new coffins bearing their names. On January the 21st, 1815, exactly 21 years after King Louis XVI was executed, a solemn procession carried the remains of the King and Queen through the very streets where mobs had once called for their blood. They found their final rest beneath the stones of the Basilica of Saint-Denis, and on the site of their first burial, a small chapel keeps silent vigil. If you ever find yourself in Paris, go visit this place and leave a quiet thought for a woman the world never truly understood.